My fellow Singaporeans, don't you get the feeling that this is a government that lurches from day to day and has no long-term plan? That there is no one today who is the equal of the late Dr. Goh Keng Swee, who was responsible for the master plan that put Singapore on the road to export-led growth in the 1960s. This is a shameless electioneering budget, laced with one-off payments to the electorate, under the guise of not wanting to create entitlements. There is no pretense at putting in place long-term solutions to the problems faced by working Singaporeans. But even amidst all the relentless hype about the one-time giveaways, one salient fact stands out. That is the smoke and mirrors over the budget figures. The Honourable Minister somehow always manages to just balance the budget or run a small deficit. However, the balance is calculated by looking at operating revenue and then subtracting operating and development expenditure. Then there's a contribution from Temasek and GIC, which may be much less than half their total profit. But interest and investment income on our enormous reserves is not added in. If we do this, then the basic government surplus is about $15 billion, and not close to zero as claimed. This may not tell the whole story, because it may not include the income from Temasek and GIC, or the profits from land sales. Surpluses of this portion of GDP have been the rule for over 20 years now. The Reform Party is not advocating giving back to the people the whole of the surplus for this year. However, we say that we do need to have a rational debate as a nation as to what is the prudent level of reserves and what are our long-term needs. The government's attitude has always been that we are too childlike to make rational decisions, and therefore the sweet jar must be hidden away on a high shelf out of our reach. Much is made of the fact that the budget is supposed to help Singaporeans cope with inflation. However, inflation on its own is not the problem. The problem is that our wages have barely kept pace with inflation, and the culprit here is relentless population growth driven by this government's liberal foreign worker policy. The claimed increase in real median household incomes does not fit the experience of most Singaporeans. Part of it may be explained by the big increase in the number of PRs and new citizens who are included in the figure for resident households. They are likely to have better paying jobs and fewer dependents. And there has been a rise in the number of working members per household. More of you are going out to work or working longer hours. The Minister says, as though it is something to be proud of, that labour force participation rates have reached OECD levels. But these countries have unemployment rates that are much higher than Singapore's. Is he really saying that actually real unemployment among Singaporeans is much higher than the official statistics suggest? And what is the government's answer to rising inflation? How does it help to give you away a series of one-off payments, much of which go into CPF, when prices are permanently higher and inflation appears to be accelerating? And the idea of setting up a price council to monitor excessive price rises and shame the companies involved into backing down is laughable. Such attempts at moral suasion were tried extensively in the 1960s and 1970s in the US and the UK, but never worked for very long. Has the government forgotten all the economics that Dr. Goh taught them? The underlying causes of inflation come from our limited land resources and relentlessly rising population. This drives up rents and property prices. Also, from the near monopolies the GLCs have in many utilities like public transport, power and telecoms. The Reform Party has called for more competition and a sell-off of GLC companies. Where this is impossible, we want a more effective competition regulator. The government says it will control the influx of foreign workers. However, what has gone unnoticed is the fact that the government figures don't add up. To achieve their economic growth targets, they will probably have to let the number of foreign workers rise substantially, even if they meet their own ambitious productivity targets. Will they come clean and let us know whether they are still targeting a total population of 6.5 million by 2020, by which time native Singaporeans will be a minority? And what is the point of further housing subsidies for low-income families? Economic principles and historical experience show that it merely pushes up HDB prices by more than the subsidy. Of course, the government benefits as the freehold owner from the rise in property prices, but it is just pumping more air into the balloon. Rather than subsidies, the government should be building more small units and releasing more land for building. The Reform Party would allow more private sector competition and provide more rental flats to low-income families. We would also allow HDB owners to buy out their freehold and possibly restrict the remaining flats from being let to PRs and non-citizens. So, what else would the RP do differently? Instead of one-off payments to workfare, we would introduce a minimum wage set initially at low levels, but indexed to inflation and rising gradually over time. We would extend workfare and integrate it with child benefit instead of a one-off child development credit, which would provide income support and help with childcare to low-income working families with children. We will abolish all school fees up to secondary level, bringing us in line with other advanced nations that promise universal free education. We will introduce a basic old age pension for those without CPF or other assets, while safeguarding against abuse. We will make a start on introducing a comprehensive and universal medical insurance scheme to replace the current patchwork of MediFund, MediSave and MediShield, which have big gaps in coverage. By doing so, we would end the situation where individuals can become destitute if they suffer a devastating illness. We will continue to cut corporate and personal income tax rates where the fiscal situation allows. However, we will audit and rationalize the vast and overlapping number of corporate help schemes and tax breaks in the interests of simplifying the tax code and getting better value for the taxpayer. We will apply a similar analytical scrutiny to some of the personal income tax breaks, like the working mother's child relief, which appears to principally benefit the already well-off. We will continue to add to our reserves as it is prudent to do so. At the same time, we will engage in open and transparent debate about the appropriate level of those reserves and whether better returns can be achieved by investing in our people. My fellow Singaporeans, in the past, you have often seemed to be afflicted by short-term memory loss when you are shown a plate of goodies. Don't let this happen again. Remember, this is your money and not the government's. Please choose wisely this time.